We're out here, reacting to the dog shit takes that apparently Vaush and Kyle Kulinski have been spewing. Also, what's this? Your profile update. Is it here right now? I don't. Anyways. First. Kyle Kuklinski. Then we find Vaush. But first.
Regardless of...
Shut up! That's a shit tank, though. It's a good tank. You're friendly. Crashed your tank, by the way. No one knows how to play it. Okay. Oh, thank God. All right, Kyle Kuklinski.
So the other day we talked about the
Vaush.
the situation in Canada with the trucker blockade. Now, all of the facts in this story matter because it's a roller coaster ride in terms of things I support and don't support. So, you know, one of the things I brought up is that 90% of the truckers are vaccinated. And so the overwhelming majority are looking at these protesters, these truckers doing the blockade, and they're going, just get vaccinated. Like, just do it. It's good for the community. It's good for the collective. It's good for yourself. Over 90% protection from severe illness, hospitalization, and death. Just get vaccinated. The other thing is the Teamsters Union, which represents the truckers in Canada, is against the protest and the blockade. So, the point I'm making here is that this isn't simply a working class uprising, because their main thing is end the mandates. And it's like, okay, fine opinion to have. We can debate that. We can discuss that. But me personally, I like protests and I like blockades for things like universal health care and higher wages and, you know, more unionization and ending wars and things of that nature. That's what I'd get behind. Now, to be fair, in Canada, they already have universal health care, so they're not going to protest for universal health care. But if anything, I'm just jealous as a leftist watching what they're doing, because they have military people, former military and former police who are like running the thing, and so they're very disciplined in how they're acting, and I'm like, Jesus Christ, I've never seen the left be this organized. Certainly in my entire life. Certainly my time on this planet being alive, the left has never been this organized. Closest we got was Occupy Wall Street, and that was relatively disorganized. There was a lot of bodies there, but it was still relatively disorganized. Anyway, okay. So that is, the general breakdown of what's going on. The Canadian government is now responding in a way that I think is absolutely insane.
Insane.
And it sets a devastating precedent moving forward. So the Canadian government held this press conference the other day, and they laid out some of the things that they're going to do. Watch this.
Watch this.
We are broadening the scope of Canada's anti-money laundering and terrorist financing rules so that they cover crowdfunding platforms and the payment service providers they use. These changes cover all forms of transactions, including digital assets, such as cryptocurrencies. The illegal blockades have highlighted the fact that crowdfunding platforms and some of the payment service providers they use are not fully captured under the Proceeds of Crime and Terrorist Financing Act.
All right, before Kyle Kulinski says another fucking shit word, what is the... What did you say? Fuck. I'm so sorry.
Some of the payment service providers they use are not fully captured under the Proceeds of Crime and Terrorist Finance.
Okay. Proceeds of Crime and Terrorist Finance Act. What does this mean? Let's go to our short title. Because Canadian law is sick and they give us summaries. An act to an act to facilitate the oh my god. An act to facilitate combating the laundering of proceeds of crime and combating the finance of terrorism activities, to establish the financial, by the way, crime and terrorist. Crime as in criminals and terrorism. Yes. Some guy selling weapons in Toronto isn't a terrorist. He's a criminal. And that person is subject to penalty if funds are given to him via PayPal or Bitcoin or blah blah blah. Right? Well, now, because I just expanded it. To establish the Finance Transactions Report Analysis Center of Canada and to end and repeal the action of Her Majesty by the blah blah blah. I don't care. This act is to be decided by Proceed of Crime, Money Laundering, and Terrorist Finance Act. Interpretation. Definition. The definition of the section applied in this act. Authorized persons mean a person who is authorized under subsection 45 to person autorité. What? I don't know why I said it that way. Person autorisé. I don't know why I said it. Anyways. Center. Centre. I like. Good job. Means the final strategy report analysis center of Canada establishment by section. Okay. Client includes a person or entity that engages in it. Okay. These are all what each things mean. Good job. Thank you. Object of act. Object of this act is to implement specific measures to detect and deter money laundering and the financing of terrorist activities and the facilitation and to facilitate the investigation and prosecution. Also, if you can't label these people terrorists, the ones blockading the highway at least, then what was January 6th? Right? Are you only a terrorist if you storm the Capitol? Because they're almost doing that in Ottawa. They're still blockading like Trudeau's office and everything, right? They're sitting right over in front of Parliament Hill. Anyways. Establishing record keeping and client identification requirements for financial services providers and other persons or entities that engage in business, professions, or activities that are susceptible to being used for money laundering or the finance of terrorist activities. Requiring the reporting of suspicious finance transactions and cross-border movements of currency and monetary instruments, and the establishment of an agency that responds to it, ensuring compliance with Part 1s and blah blah blah. Record keeping. Is there a new one? What's the new like addendum? Hold on. Interpretation Act. I don't want to read through this whole thing. I should, but application. Let's go through application. This part of applies to the following persons and identities: authorized foreign banks within the meaning of section. Cooperative credit societies, life companies or foreign life companies, companies to which the Trust and Loan Companies Act applies. Trustee. Okay, so I don't know if the addendum's here. Government persons. Where's the new stuff? Previous version. Clarification. Oh. The permanent agencies, the purpose of the organization that accords with paragraph criminal code. Okay, hold on. Hey. So I'm looking at the profile thing. I don't think it's here. Ah. Oh, hello? Oh, okay. Anyways. It might be in vanilla. Alright. Corporate privacy monitoring instruments, protecting Canada's financial system, financial transactions between blah 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 regulation notice. Notice of violation. Violations. Notice of violation. Appeal to federal court. Publication rules. Oh, amendment. Amendments. Okay, well, there will be. So I don't know if the new one's here. It's probably going through the house still. I don't know. Don't care. Notice of violation. The Government Council may make regulations to designate as a violation that may proceed with under the part. Okay, classifying each. Oh God, fucking hold on. Actually, which way was this order supposed to be read in? Notice of violation. Notice of violation. Okay, hold on. Violations. Okay. Wait, is this the same thing? Yeah, these are the same thing. Okay. Violations. Let's close this. The governor and council may make regulations designating as a violation that may be proceeded with under this part the contravention of a specific provision of the act or the regulations. Classifying each violation as minor violation, a serious violation, or a very serious violation. Classifying a series of minor violations as a serious violation or very serious violation. Having regard to the subsection, fixing a penalty or range of penalties in respect of any violation. Blah 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 blah. Maximum penalty is $100,000 by a person and $500 by an entity. Oh, okay. Wow, those are the maximum penalties. $100,000. Notice when the center issues an image. Okay, but how do you get a notice? That's what I really care about. I can guess. Criteria for penalty. Except if a penalty is fixed under paragraph 73.1(1)(c), I don't know where that is. Maybe earlier, don't know. The amount of penalty shall, in each case, be determined taking into account that penalties have as their purpose to encourage compliance with this act rather than to be punished. The harm done by the violation and any other criteria that may be prescribed by regulation. How contravention may be proceeded with. If contravention, blah, 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 under paragraph, blah, blah, blah. Commission of violence. Every commission, oh my God. Notice of violation. Jesus. Okay, I gotta go to this. Fuck. Where is 73.1-C? 73. Okay, .1. C. Go to this. 73.1-C. Oh, having regard to subsection, fixing a penalty and range of penalties. Okay, bonehead. That's not what I wanted. Okay, can I just get a little bit of a short title interpretation? I think this is all I give a fuck. Okay, I don't want to read through all of this. I apologize. I also don't. I wish there was a little title card. It's very hard to go through all of this shit because the act obviously goes through a lot of stuff. But my assumption, this could be easily wrong, but my assumption is that basically, oh, the same thing. My assumption is that this will be a penalty that you get put onto you if, so. Basically, a GoFundMe was trying to fund all of this, right? The GoFundMe for this. And if that, what the GoFundMe is funding, if that is deemed to be a terrorist organization, then each person who donated to that foundation can have their assets frozen pending an investigation into why are they donating money to that thing. In the same way that if I send $1,000 to the Taliban, my assets are going to get frozen because it's like, why the fuck are you sending $1,000 to the Taliban? In the same sense of if I'm sending $1,000 to the January 6th rioters, my assets should probably be frozen. So if I'm funding the closure of a major border or a major border entryway, the Liberty Bridge, which was held up by protesters, yeah, that's an act of terrorism. Now, if you don't want to use the word act of terrorism, because some people are dumb and don't know what the fuck... Well, actually, I don't even know if I want to use the word terrorism, because terrorism can be like a very broad term, which is kind of a problem with it. So with these people, because it's hard to say if the January 6 people were terrorists or not, right? So I don't know. It's we'll just say fuck the word terrorist. These criminals, these people who are illegally protesting at the border, need to be dealt with, and their means of funding is a great way to stop that. Now we'll get into Vosh's take, because it's funny that you can be against this, but then your take is just send in the military forehead. But we'll get to it later.
So they're calling them terrorists.
Now, wait, okay. This is why I bring up the word terrorist. I forgot what he was about to say. Oh, God, I forgot. I pre-watched this, just the starting. I forgot what he was about to say. The reason I use the word terrorist in this regard is because of this definition that he's about to use.
No. That's not accurate. They're not doing violence for a political reason. That's not what's...
Okay. So his definition for a terrorist is someone that uses violence in a political manner. Well, they're doing this in a political manner. Whatever they're doing, it's for a political reason. Okay, we've ticked one box. The other box is violence. Would standing in front of the Parliament building be considered violence? I don't think so. Maybe not. We'll see where things go. Holding a city hostage could be violent. A form of violence, in the same way that being held in a jail cell is violence. Is blocking a major border violence? Yeah, I would consider that to be violence. And the reason I can say this and be consistent on it is because I highly doubt that Kyle Kulinski is going to come over here and say that what's going on at the border between Mexico and the United States isn't considered violence. I'm happy to consider that violence because my view on violence is that there's some amount of violence baked into anything. You getting arrested for committing a crime is violence being enacted against you. You being thrown out of your house because you failed to pay rent, you being evicted from your house, is a form of violence, right? Those things are violent. What happens to you in those moments is a violent act. So holding up $50 million worth of goods from crossing a land border between two nations is a form of violence because you are hindering the normal lives of a fuck ton of people. The same way that eventually, right, you have your right to protest, of course, but eventually, you causing a big enough disturbance in Ottawa is going to be considered violence towards anyone who lives there. Right? Like, yeah. I don't know. So yes, I would consider them terrorists if using that definition. They are doing a violent act, blocking a land border, restricting goods and services from crossing a border that people have the right to cross. And you can maybe apply this to Ottawa. I would be less, willing to do that. Yeah. So I would call them. That's why I was using terrorists before. I would call them terrorists based on Kyle's definition. I don't know if on my own definition I would call them terrorists, but I don't really know.
Happening. The overwhelming majority of these people are peaceful, regardless if you...
Yeah, so none of them will get flagged by this act. Who do you think is going to get flagged by this act? What do you think the emergency act's getting... who do you think the emergency act's going to get used on? Anyone who's standing in the vicinity of a protest? No, of course not, bonehead. my assumption is that you will get flagged if you're donating to a GoFundMe that's funding the border blockade. Right? That
if you agree or disagree with their politics. That's irrelevant to the question here. The question is, are they actually terrorists? The answer is no. So I saw this and I was like, this can't be true. It's coming straight out of the mouth of a Canadian government official. But I was like, this can't be true. So I dug a little deeper to figure out whether it was true. And the reality is even worse than I thought. So take a look at this. This is from BBC News. Trudeau vows to freeze anti-mandate protesters' bank accounts.
Is it just the headline? Nice, it's just the headline. Okay. BBC article about Trudeau vows to freeze anti-mandate protesters' bank accounts. Big black cock. Found it. Okay. Kyle, I know you're famous for this. Let's read past the headline. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has taken the unprecedented step on invoking the Emergency Act to crack down on anti-vaccine mandate protests. Mr. Trudeau said that the scope of the measure would be time-limited, reasonable, and proportionate, and would not see the military deployed. With no need for court orders, banks can freeze personal accounts for anyone linked with the protest. Hundreds of demonstrations remain in Canada capital city. On Sunday, law enforcement cleared anti-mandate protesters by the Ambassador Bridge, not Liberty Bridge, in Windsor, a critical pathway for Canada-U.S. trade, after a week-long stalemate. What began as a rally against a new rule that all truckers must be vaccinated across the U.S.-Canadian border or quarantined upon return has grown into a broader challenge to all COVID health restrictions. Blah, 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 blah. Banks would be able to freeze personal accounts for anyone linked to the protest without any need for a court order. Vehicle insurance or anyone involved with the demonstration can also be suspended. Vehicle insurance of anyone involved with the demonstration can also be suspended. Said that they're broadening terrorist financial rules to cover the cryptocurrencies and governmental power as part of the effort. Okay. Yeah. Anyways. So thankfully, what's happening here? Support of enemy may give votes to pass through the House, though the Senate could still be a hurdle. Yep. Anyways, so thankfully the headline lines up with the rest of what he's saying. So, with that in mind, what would be the reason to freeze? So, okay, actually, not even. I know the reason. You should all know the reason why you would freeze somebody's bank account. It's a huge deterrent. But what's the difference between what he's going to say next, which is or is he going to talk about the military? I don't know. But what's the big difference between sending in the military? That's the other thing, is that Trudeau vows to not send in the military. What's the big difference between sending in the military to deal with protesters and freezing your bank account?
Bank accounts.
Mentions it.
Their bank accounts. So we covered one of the angles to this story previously is that they raised about $10 million through GoFundMe. And then GoFundMe seized that money. And they were like, no, you're not going to get it. What? So I said at the time when I saw that.
Yeah, Kyle, what if you raise $10 million and then that $10 million gets used to invade the Capitol? What if January 6th was purely funded by GoFundMe? And GoFundMe looked at that money and they were about to flag it. They're like, this seems suspicious. Why the fuck is there a bunch of money for something called raidthecapital.gov? Let's not flag it, though. Two things. One, I think for tax purposes, the government should already know where your money's going in the first place. Not that the government does, but you need to declare this money for taxes, so you need to kind of tell the government what you're spending it on anyways. And it's hard to do that with things like GoFundMe. But B, yeah, should you not be freezing accounts of potentially violent groups?
No, no, no. Again, I don't care what you think of the nature of this specific protest. The precedent it sets to have crowdfunding sites say, we're going to decide based on our own politics or based on some pressure from a government that we're not going to allow you to have access to the funds.
Again, think of the difference between this and just sending the military. Like, oh, think of the precedent this sets. Okay, well, you can either do this, or we can send the military after you.
That are yours, that were donated to you.
Or we just let this, or the third option, which maybe Cal Kulinski's advocating for, is that you just let this happen. You just let them block the Ambassador Bridge. Until what? No one gives a fuck about them.
I hate that. I hate that. These platforms, whether it's, you know, big tech, social media companies.
Like, God fucking damn it. I just looked at this title by fucking Kim Iverson. Shut the fuck up. I'm trying to think. Like, the precedent that this sets. Like, should you just be allowed? Okay, so, like, what I'm thinking about is you can have a very small movement, and that movement can cause a lot of damage, as we saw on January 6th, right? If January 6th could have been caused by a lot smaller of a crowd that was just armed, basically, or whatever, right? Or January 6th wasn't like was kind of like a blip on the radar because it was just a bunch of losers who just kind of like wandered into the Capitol, basically. And then there's a lot of people that are like fucked up, like, right? There's a crowd of a bunch of people that are like, oh, this is fun. Like, am I allowed to be here? And then there's a bunch of other people like, oh yeah, we're here to kill Pence. And as is shown with the Ambassador Bridge, a small group of people can cause a lot of damage. $50 million in goods was held up. So a very small group of people can cause a very large amount of damage. If nobody in the entire fucking country supports these people, should they be allowed to cause this much damage? The answer to that question should be no. So how do you stop them? Option 1, sick the military on them. Option 1, cops, which will happen at Ambassador Bridge, RCMP. RCMP is almost the military. Option 2, send the military. Or option 3, freeze their bank accounts. I'll give you a couple seconds to figure out which one is the less violent approach. And all have the same outcome.
Or something like a funding site, crowdfunding site.
So yes, I understand. If I can try to understand where he's coming from, in the sense that, like, I'm bouncing all over the place. Anyways, I get where he's coming from in the sense of, like, well, what happens when it's like a protest for, what if it was a protest for civil rights, and MLK had his bank account frozen. Yeah, that would have been a lot better than MLK being arrested like 27 times. Yeah. MLK having his bank account frozen is a lot better than MLK having been thrown in jail multiple times. Yeah, that's really simple, actually. I'm thinking about this now. That's a lot better option. So the precedent that you're thinking about, this is a lot better. This is a lot more democratized than whatever the fuck else you're talking about. Like how you deal with, unless Kyle Kulinski's opinion on this is literally just, well, let them do it. They'll fizzle out eventually. Which is just, I can't even believe that he would. I'm not even gonna give a response to that because there's no way he thinks that, right? Well, I'll let loose if he does actually think that.
Supposed to be just mediums. They're supposed to be just like, look, anybody could use it for any reason. Now, are there still rules? Sure, you can't crowdfund a murder. Murder's illegal.
Okay, but how would you stop that, Kyle? Would you freeze suspect GoFundMe's? Because you can crowdfund a murder and just title it "Definitely Not a Murder.ca." And I'm not crowdfunding a murder. I know I'm a mass murderer, and I'm actively calling for the murder of somebody, but I'm just gathering money. Moron.
Protesting is not illegal.
You're right. You have every right to protest. That's why the military isn't getting sent in. But you can't blockade a fucking major highway or major bridge between, well, a major bridge anywhere. And you can't blockade the fucking Parliament building. There has been multiple offerings. I don't know if you're not aware of this, Kyle. There have been multiple offerings, even at the Ambassador Bridge, telling the protesters to just move over there. Just go protest on the grass. And just get off the road. And they didn't do that. So the RCMP came in. And the Windsor Police came in. And same thing in Ottawa. They've been told and asked to move the protests off of the streets. But they're still being loud and annoying and disrupting. So eventually they're just going to be told to leave the city if they haven't already.
Regardless of what you think of the specifics and the nature of this protest, for GoFundMe to seize their money is a gigantic overstep. I don't know if it was because of pressure from the Canadian government. I don't know if it was because of the personal politics within the company, GoFundMe itself.
What are you talking about?
But they froze it, and that's inexcusable.
How? Kyle. How do you stop, like you said, you can't fund a murder. How do you stop that? What if I just title the murder I'm funding, not murder? Totally not murder. Ignore my actions in real life.
And now they're going further. Calling them terrorists, and they vow to freeze their personal bank accounts. By the way, zero oversight. This doesn't go in front of a judge. There is no...
What are you talking about? Oh, for the act itself. The bank can just freeze it without a court order. Yeah. Okay. I thought he was talking about the bill. I was like, we have a Supreme Court, my guy.
Due process. They're just going to freeze the accounts. That's what they want to do.
He's also misunderstanding how, like, the law works. Your account gets frozen at first, but then you can appeal it. It's in the bill. Retention, reporting, currency, monitoring instruments, in Canadian's financial system, record keeping, reporting, and I can report a suspicion, registration, application, review, appeal to federal court. You say there's no due process. Here's the due process. The only thing that they changed is that they can do it before getting a warrant, basically, for simpler terms. It's not a warrant you get to, well, maybe you do get a warrant to freeze your bank account, but now they don't have to do it. They don't need a court order to freeze the bank account. They can freeze the bank account, then get the court order. Appeal. A person or entity that appealed for the review under Section 11.3 may appeal the director's decision to a federal court within 30 days after the day on which the decision is served, or within any longer period than the court allows. Okay, done. If the director does not make a decision within 90 days after the day with the court director received the application for review, the applicant may appeal to the federal court with 30 days after the day on which the 90-day period expired. The decision to deny any application revoked registration. Precaution against disclosure. In an appeal, the court shall take every reasonable precaution, including, when appropriate, conducting hearing in private to avoid disclosure to the court any person's right to information referred to. Okay, don't care. There's your due process, bonehead.
No. Hard no. And again, you have to understand the main point here. I don't care what you
So again, this is stupid. Because what are you comparing it to? What other option do you have? Nobody cares about these people. They're disrupting the public. We don't have to call them terrorists if you don't want to. But they're disrupting the public. Nobody supports them. And they're causing immeasurable harm to society. Do we just let them do what they want? Or what? What do you want? We're going to get into somebody else's take. I know what they want. It's kind of fucked up. But what do you want, Kyle? What would you prefer they do?
Think about the nature of this specific protest.
Because, again, as we've seen with history, MLK, any other fucking protests, whatever, Occupy Wall Street, I don't know how that was broken up. You get thrown in jail. The military gets sicked on you. This is a significantly better option than the military being called down upon you.
If you set this precedent, it is going to be used on Black Lives Matter protesters. It's going to be used.
Yeah, you know what's used right now instead? Cops. The military.
On leftists, it's going to be used on unions protesting for higher wages and more vacation time.
Maybe, but right now it's the cops and the military.
It's going to be used like that. So you draw a hard line right now and you say, hell no, we can't allow it. We just can't allow it. And by the way, so there are politicians in the U.S., mostly Republicans, who are speaking out against this. Good, I'm glad they're speaking out against this. But, there's a little bit of a problem here. The Patriot Act already...
He's going to talk about some Patriot Act bullshit. So we'll talk about this. Again, I would love to know, because he's not going to say it, I guess, because he's fucking spineless. What is your alternative? How do you stop people who are causing a measurable harm to society? A small group of people that nobody supports, not even within their own industry. Like you said, 90% of truckers are already vaccinated, and the union that supports them, or represents them, doesn't support them either. So what is your alternative? How do you deal with these people? Is it... What? What do you do? I hope... We haven't known. I'm going to take it. I'm going to give them a lot of charitability here. I hope it's not that you just let them do whatever they want for the sake of protesting. Because at a certain point, you're not protesting anything. You're just blockading a fucking bridge. Like, can I shit on my boss's front door and call it protesting? Can I throw a brick through his house and call it protesting? Now, I would consider the throwing a brick thing violence. I don't know if Kyle would. I don't know if I would consider shitting on someone's front lawn violence. And if I just call it protesting, what could you do? At this moment, right, you call the cops on me and I go to jail, or I pay a fine. But instead, there's a new option now that's opening up called financial restriction. You freeze bank accounts. I don't know how you don't see that as better than sending the fucking military after you. At Vosh.
Gave the U.S. government the authority to do this same damn thing. So they're like, oh, this is fascism coming to Canada. Okay, but then a lot of these same politicians voted for the fascism that came to America. If you're going to call that fascism, then we also have it under the Patriot Act. Not only do they spy on everybody illegally with the rubber stamp fake FISA court, but also one of the things they can do is freeze bank accounts. No due process. No oversight.
Okay. You say no oversight like as if you guys don't have a court system. You appeal it and it goes through the court. It's right fucking here in the bill or in the act. Not the bill. It's not a bill. It's an act. In the act, you can appeal it. The only thing that changed is that when you enact the hold on. I thought I'd have time, but he says so much dumb shit. Like, how many times have you warned these people? Here's another video of cops telling them to just leave. Not doing anything. They're just like, leave, please. Fuck, what was I going to say? Oh, god damn it. Yeah, you can appeal to the federal court. I don't know. Oh. The only thing that changed is while the Emergencies Act is in place, banks don't have to go to court to get a warrant to freeze your account. They can just freeze the account and then go and get a warrant or go through the courts. That's all that's changed. Only while the Emergency Act is enacted. And the Emergencies Act is timed. I don't know if he set a time limit on it, but the government usually sets a time limit for the Emergencies Act to be enacted, and it automatically goes into review the moment that time limit's up. That's how government works. Anyway, it's not really important, because again, well, I just got to keep saying it every time he says, oh, there's no due process, because there's due process. The only thing they changed is that the banks can freeze your account, then go to the courts. And when you see that your account's frozen, you can go to the courts.
So
it's not like your account is frozen and there's nothing you could do about it until the government decides to give you your account back. No, you go to court.
Hold themselves to the same standards as you know we look at in Canada here. So they're using what's happening with this blockade and this protest in Canada. And they're using it like a 9/11 moment where they're like, let's just entrench more power and authority to the government.
This allows for people to protest without getting violently removed from the location they're in.
And
by the military.
You gotta call a spade a spade. You gotta call it what it is. This is rank authoritarianism. This is like...
Okay. This is fucking cringe as fuck. Imagine you calling this... Like, you have to think of the alternative. What is the alternative? The alternatives are, again, either don't do anything, which I think we can both agree is dog shit, and I hope that he doesn't have this opinion. So we're going to assume he doesn't have this opinion. The other option is you send the fucking military at them, or the cops, or the RCMP. You send one of a violent division after them. Which one is more authoritarian? The thing that lets you not be violently removed from wherever the fuck you are? Or the violent removal of where you are by a force? We'll use a leftist term. Force operators? Whatever. I don't know what the fuck you call cops now.
Textbook New Age authoritarianism. That's what it is.
New Age authoritarianism. Huh. That's crazy. I forgot about the old age authoritarianism when they just sent the military after you.
And so my feelings on the specifics of this protest, like I told you, are mixed because the Teamsters Truckers Union is against the protest. 90% of the truckers are vaccinated, and the overwhelming majority of the protesters are against what they're doing.
Okay, yeah.
But at the same time, GoFundMe should not freeze their money. The government should not freeze their bank accounts. And you cannot call them terrorists. The precedent this sets is horrendous.
Why can't you call them terrorists? I want to know what your definition for a terrorist is, because your earlier definition was a group of people causing violence for political means. What they're doing now is for political means, obviously. Are they causing violence? We can, debate that if you want. I would say blockading $50 million worth of goods from getting across a border is a form of violence. The same way blockading immigrants from getting to your border is a form of violence. Now, are certain forms of violence justified? Yeah. Like stopping illegal border crossings is justified. You know, of course, we can talk about... I'm on the left. I'm not saying that you don't let any loosen up border restrictions, get more people in. Yeah. Anyways.
And then look, the final point I'll make, and maybe people watching this, most of you are probably with everything I've said.
But we don't have to. No. But we don't have to call them terrorists. Fine. We don't have to call them. We can call them illegal protesters.
Up to this point. But there's one point here where I might lose you, but it's okay because it's how I feel about.
You've already lost me, bro.
I see no problem with...
You lost me with this haircut, bro.
Instead of doing the hard vaccine mandate...
Wait. Oh.
Just do vaccine or test. So people are so dead set on...
He doesn't even know the law. That was the law, bonehead. If you are... I don't even think he knew what the law was, because the original law was that if you're entering, so if you go to the States, you are subject to the state's law, which was you getting turned around, but that got struck down by the Supreme Court. But coming back to Canada, you are subject to either you show your vaccine passport or you get quarantined for 5 days. Or show a negative test or something. I don't know if there's negative test stuff in there or if they just automatically quarantined you. Didn't really give a fuck about testing. So pretty much the same thing. I think you had asymptomatic, like whatever their quarantine standards are. I think it's asymptomatic 5 days with a negative test or whatever the fuck. I don't know. Anyways, it was basically already the law and he just doesn't know.
Not getting the vaccine. Okay, look, you're wrong. You know, the overwhelming statistical evidence says you're going to be fine, and if anything, the vaccine is going to help you. But you know what? 90% are already vaccinated. 9 out of 10, that's a lot of people vaccinated. So why not say, okay, if you don't want to get the vaccine, fine, just take a rapid test. That's it. That's not some ridiculous infringement on your liberty. No. Rapid test takes 2 seconds to swab the thing in your nose, and then you get the answer in 10 minutes, depending on which test you're using, 10, 15 minutes, whatever it is. That's just a basic standard regulation. It's like telling construction workers you have to wear a hard hat. Nobody views that as like the death of freedom in the West. So just give...
I don't know, dude. I don't even think you knew what the restriction was and the mandate in the first place was. And I don't think you know how the right wing is acting these days, bro. You are... I'd be hard pressed to try to pass seatbelt laws in today's world.
Is that not a compromise? That makes sense?
The compromise was already there, buddy.
Okay, you don't have to get the vaccine if you don't want the vaccine, but you're going to take a quick test. That's it. That's all you got to do. That's all you got to do. And look, part of me is inclined to say...
Yeah, instead of a quick test, though, it was quarantine for 5 days. Or maybe you take a test. I don't know how the ruling went. I don't want to find out.
If you have 90% already vaccinated...
It's close enough anyways.
I don't see why this is a big deal anyway. Why not just say, fine, okay, we concede. No more hard vaccine mandate. There you go.
There was never a hard vaccine mandate, bonehead. Yeah,
but
I don't care. You're an idiot.